Okay, we'll bring this meeting to order. It's for our regular council meeting of March 11th. Next on the agenda is adoption of the minutes.
Resolved that the minutes of the meeting held on February 25th, 2025 be adopted.
Mover and seconder, please. Latham and Noble. All in favor? Motion carries. Next, we move down to disclosure of pecuniary interest or the general nature thereof. Not seeing any. Move down to presentations. We have none today. Next motion is committee of the whole.
Resolved that we do now move into committee of the whole.
Mover and seconder, please. Hence and Cookett. I'm sorry. Before we get rolling, we do have an announcement here. We have a new member to the team, and Blaine would like to introduce her.
Thank you, Warden Jones. So through you two members of council, I would like to introduce, there she is, Holly Hurley. Holly has joined us as our new Director of People and Culture, and Holly's been with us now for a full week, actually just over a week. She keeps coming back, so that's a good thing. And so she is a welcome addition to the team. She brings a tremendous amount of experience to us, and she's looking forward to working with the executive team and all of council. But I'll ask Holly to say a few words. Welcome, Holly.
Week 2. I'm excited to be here, and I look forward to getting to know you all a little bit better. Feel free to reach out at any time, and yeah, nice to meet everyone.
Well, welcome to the team, Holly.
Thank you.
So all in favor for committee of the whole? Carried. Going down to reports. First report is actually from me. My activities for the month of February, and I do have one extra to add for February 12th. I sat in on a Zoom meeting with Carolyn Cron with some municipalities from down the Golden Horseshoe area, looking at doing a CIP TIG initiative, and they were asking questions about ours and how it worked. And so it was nice to sit in and talk to people that were interested in what we've already achieved and help them along the process. If there's any questions about my activities? No, move motion, please.
Resolved that the report titled Warden's Activity Report, February 2025, dated March 11th, 2025, from Warden Jones be received and filed.
Mover and seconder, please. Noble and Hence. All in favor? Motion carries. Next, we have Councillors Gare and the Terrace Lodge Redevelopment Fundraising Committee final report. Go ahead, Dominique.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. So today, it's a bit of a, not a bit, it is a big milestone for the fundraising committee. And I realize that the report is self-explanatory, but being that it is a milestone, I thought I would just indulge in a few minutes just to make sure that it is, that this achievement is part of the record and everybody gets to see the key highlights. And in the report today, you also see that there are two parts. So one is the fundraising part, the final report of the fundraising side. And then also a brief discussion on the changes that we're proposing to the terms of reference. So starting with the final report. So first I want to thank the team who helped put the report together. So that's another example of fine teamwork that is often behind the scenes. And but you can see again, this is emblematic of the full campaign itself and very professional, comprehensive, and clear. So I'll really just gonna whip through the slides. Like I said, it is self-explanatory, but I wanted to highlight the fact that a successful campaign is successful because of a very clear vision from the beginning and clear goals. So that was set, hard to believe, 5 years ago, and with a lot of adjustment, because as you probably realize, today is also the anniversary of official declaration of the pandemic. So that was a whole new twist, even for the fundraising consultants who were guiding us in shaping, designing this campaign. This was new to them as well. And so everybody was scrambling to say, uh-oh, how do you do fundraising now? So very proud of, again, of the accomplishment, even with the extra twist. We wanted to capture, you'll see in the report at some point, we do have a picture of the day of the kickoff. Some of you were there that day. It was the snowiest, coldest, windiest day that we probably had in all of 2020. And that was the actual day of the kickoff. And we did it. We had to do it outdoors. And, but we have photos to say that everybody showed up despite the conditions, and that set the tone for the entire campaign. So we had great committee from different municipal councils and from the community, amazing support from staff, of course, also behind the scenes. Then I also want to highlight the fact that it was another key feature of the campaign was the transparency and the strategy. So it was difficult to pitch, even for the community, the fact that we had announced that there was provincial funding for a brand new facility. It was subsidized also by the county. So why fundraising? And so the strategy there was to show that this was about the comforts of home, that these were things that were not covered in a basic development, and yet it was the standards that we wanted for residents. And so it was very strategic to decide to develop a wish book that was developed by the residents and staff and their families to say these are the items, like make it very tangible and concrete as to why we're raising money. So that catalog really carried us through. It helped keep the campaign dynamic and fresh because we were able to target different seasonal items and keep the website and keep the call to action every year fresh and dynamic, as I said. So I think then now the results speak for themselves. We were able to adjust about 3 and 4 years in as the redevelopment actually took shape, because remember, even the wish book was developed in the abstract before the redevelopment started. So once the building actually took place, then we were able to reassess the needs. So the wish book was adjusted, the actual financial target was adjusted, and we were able to, we reset it to just under $500,000. And today, as the final report for the fundraising side, we're happy to report that we have exceeded that target, and we're just over $517,000. So that's through a lot of transactions. So, and the reason we wanted to highlight the number of transactions is just because, just to kind of give you a sense that every transaction has a lot of work. Like for one transaction, that means there was, action beforehand, just in terms of promoting the campaign or whatever event, and plus the actual entry, plus the processing, plus the financial reporting and the committee meetings and the tracking. So we wanted to highlight that, and also wanted to highlight the number of hours of volunteer work. As you know, fundraising campaigns are a lot of work, but the key is to try to keep your costs down so that the maximum amount from each dollar goes towards the items that we wanted to purchase. So thanks to all the volunteer hours that were put in, we were below that. I think we were under 5%, if not 4% of expenses that for the total of the fundraising dollars. And so I think those were the highlights I wanted to, so you have all the numbers there. Like I said, that very proud of the expenses being low. Again, that's thanks to the volunteer hours, but also in-kind donations, like a strong partner like the Aylmer Express, who allowed us to have a very professional presence throughout the campaign with print material and advertising and so on. So in the end, so you will see just a list of some of the donors. Again, not all donors wanted to be listed and we certainly respect that, but we wanted to just give you a sense of how much of a collective effort it was. And with that, I want to say a big thank you. I think everyone in this room contributed in some way, shape, or form, and that's the true achievement, is that the vision for this was not only in the comforts of home for residents, but that it would be a collective effort and a collective success. And I think we can proudly say that that's what was accomplished. So thank you to all of you and to all of those involved. So this brings us to, now that the fundraising part is done, then we move to the spending part. So we get to actually purchase items. And so we just wanted to make that clear. The terms of reference of the committee were very clear in terms of our mandate and the oversight of the fundraising effort. So that part is completed. We feel that in order to continue the level of transparency and credibility of the campaign, that we want to continue to have oversight over the actual purchases and spending of the funds that were raised. So we're proposing that for the next little while, the committee's terms of reference be adjusted to provide just the governance responsibility. And so that we can continue to liaise with our donors, continue to report on how the funds are being in fact spent. And if there are any changes to, like, significant changes to some of the items that we were planning on purchasing, that we do that again transparently and in communication with major donors. So that's what is being proposed for the terms of reference. And we, speaking with staff, like, that should basically take us to the end of this term of council, and we would be able to officially wrap things up at that point. And I did forget, at the end of the report, we are hoping to do a full donor recognition and grand opening on June 7th. So in the afternoon, Saturday, June 7th. So please mark your calendars for that. That will be a very, very special event on both the redevelopment side, but also for our donors to celebrate the, like I said earlier, collective accomplishments. So those are my remarks. Thank you, Mr. Warden.
Well, thank you, Councillor Jaguar. Congratulations on a job well done for the whole, yourself and the whole committee. I know fundraising is not the easiest task, and I'm glad you took it on, not me. Anyway, congratulations, and you can't thank you and the team enough for doing that. Any other comments around the table? Deputy Warden, go ahead.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Warden. Yes, I would like to add my voice to the chorus. Thank you very much, Dominique, for doing this. I know you started out doing this in the last term of council. Thank you very much. I asked you to do this, continue on, and I believe the phrase was "gut it out." And I know we had a discussion on what that meant, but thank you very much for doing this. And the success that you've achieved is really good, you know, considering you started the campaign during a COVID period. And the results, I think, are definitely going to enhance the quality of life at the Terrace Lodge. So thank you, and the committee. Please express that onto the committee. I want to, the report, I assume, hasn't been released just yet. Okay. When I went through the report the other day, I got to admit, I was a little disappointed. There may be some missing gaps in the donors, and you may want to go back through the list of anonymous and make sure that that's truly their wish. Some of us didn't get a choice. And I'm a little embarrassed here, but still, I'm just raising it because I know how I felt about it, but if there are others out there, we don't want to give the message that's unappreciated. So I might want to go back and revisit that.
Thank you, Deputy Warden, for mentioning that. And I do want to say, aside from the anonymous donors, sometimes in the portal and the way the donations were recorded, it was not always clear. And therefore, we erred on the side of caution. And if we did not have a clear indication of a yes, we had to assume a no, just for privacy. But absolutely. So one of the things we're working on, so this is a, I would say, a preliminary list. It's not a comprehensive and final list. And one of the projects we're working on in terms of this next phase, which is all about recognition, is there will be a recognition wall that will be installed and a feature in Terrace Lodge, at Terrace Lodge. And so that's being designed right now. And because this will be a more permanent fixture, we want to get it right. And so part under our new terms of reference and donor sort of management and donor liaison, we will be going through the list and we will be contacting, because we want to share first off the final report. We will be contacting all donors to confirm consent one way or another. So even if it was consent was provided before, even if they want to change their mind. So thank you for highlighting that, because that will be part of one of our tasks. And certainly if right now, if we omitted anyone that didn't want to be omitted, certainly our apologies. We're just beginning the recognition process. Thank you.
Okay, any further comments? Not, we have a resolution, please.
Resolved that the report titled Terrace Lodge Redevelopment Fundraising Committee Final Report and Change to Terms of Reference from the Chair of the Terrace Lodge Redevelopment Fundraising Committee dated March 11th, 2025, be received and filed, and that Elgin County Council approved the recommended changes to the Terrace Lodge Redevelopment Fundraising Committee Terms of Reference as contained in Appendix A, and that updated terms of reference be included in the committee bylaw.
Mover and seconder, please. Whitner and Latham? All in favor? Motion carries. Moving down to 6.3, we have Director of Community and Cultural Services, the community consultation process for the relocation of the Elmer Library branch. Welcome, Brian. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Warden, and through you to County Council. I'm pleased today to be joined by Natalie Marlowe, our Manager of Library Services, and Deline Van Zyl, our Supervisor of the Elmer Library. This report responds to the resolution from Elmer Town Council to establish a committee to undertake public engagement on the Elmer Library and the proposed relocation to the East Elgin Community Complex, as well as the motion received from the Township of Malahide supporting a consultation process through an open public forum with a focus on relocation to the complex. This is the approach that staff are recommending to County Council, as opposed to forming a committee to lead the process. I've outlined in the report the proposed framework this staff-led process could take, including a public survey through Engage Elgin and a public meeting at the East Elgin Community Complex, which we anticipate will take place in late April or early May. In addition to the process outlined in the report, we will be engaging in more informal approaches, such as surveys, tracking usage of the branch, in particular, things like how many walk or drive to the branch, and whether relocation would have an appreciable impact on this usage. Proposals for alternate locations could certainly be submitted as part of this process, but as staff, we are mindful of Council's direction on this matter, and that is to pursue relocation to the complex. So the process will be focused on implementing Council's direction. Following this consultation process, we will be providing a summary report to County Council, the Councils of Malahide and Elmer, and through this, the Complex Board, which will provide more clarity on the matter and the necessary steps to proceed with the process of relocation. We are also hoping to work with the Complex Board to clarify matters such as square footages involved and an estimate of capital costs to make the proposed space at the Complex Library ready, as this information will also be valuable for the consultation process. And finally, this is also a good opportunity to seek feedback on the types of services our residents want to see us deliver, regardless of the location. This too may help remind the community that while the library as a place is certainly important, even more important is what we can do from within that space. And certainly the possibility of doubling or tripling our space affords some real opportunities on the community service side of things, such as private study areas, enhanced space for programming, more tech space, and ability to expand our partnerships. So entering into this public consultation, we need to set the narrative to be as much about library as community service as it is about location. And we should also have information posted before we engage in a survey and public meeting to tell the public what we can deliver if our space needs are better addressed. So with that in mind, I'm happy to answer any questions council may have.
Thank you, Brian. Questions or comments for Brian? Councillor Cookett?
Thank you, Mr. Warden. Not sure where to begin here. Thank you very much for that report, Brian, especially for the those elements that deal with what a library serves to do. This whole question of the library, or the L word, as we say in Elmer, or as we also say in Elmer, welcome to Groundhog Day. You know, it's become a feature of what we like to see in Elmer for many years. And I can understand the frustration that would run through the library staff and Brian and I. I think you and I, Brian, are the only ones here that dealt with the 4-year-long journey that we had about 10 years ago. And certainly I understand the frustration of making this come to an end. We have been advocating together for a long time, and I certainly will continue to advocate for library expansion. I did say during my election campaign that I would not pursue the library, but I'm not pursuing it. It's kind of been thrust upon me at this point. So, you know my passion for this, Brian. I was kicked out of office 10 years ago because of it. And just as a background, and I see that Cynthia Grant is here today, and she has developed a document dealing with the background, so I hope that everybody has a chance to read it at some point. I think it's important for the people here to know some of the background, so I'll be quick about that. I can remember that fateful day of June the 7th, another June the 7th, June the 7th, 2014, after spending 4 years and many committees on this project, we were at the tender stage in Elmer. We were voting actually on the tender, and that got defeated 4-3. So it was right there for us, and it was a local builder as well. So I guess, you know, as a background, it's one of those heartbreaking moments when you're in politics. I mean, we're used to a negative vote, we're used to losing sometimes, but that was a very special setback. So anyway, I just wanted to convey that we've been through this process before, and some of the fact that we have been through the process before perhaps makes us appreciate, or makes us grasp at the complex as a solution. And the complex as a solution was not something that Elmer began. It was something that happened at a complex meeting, sort of out of the blue. But, you know, you say, aha, here's a big building, the complex, that is having financial problems. We can solve it by putting the library there. What a good fit, until it isn't. There are major considerations about how we envision the complex in the future, and we are currently in negotiations to do this. A library there, sure, let's talk about that. All right, let's do that. A library there, though, must not be the sole choice of where we're putting this library. Yeah, I know we voted for it in principle, but that is not a commitment. And I didn't take it as a solid commitment anyway. I voted for it wearing my county hat, so to speak. We all wear different hats. In fact, you know, this whole process, when you look at what's happened in this process, there are a number of different organizations in which people wore their particular organization's hat. You know, we wore the complex hat when we voted to ask county about putting the library there. And we, you know, and I wore my county hat when I voted on it. I think maybe it's time I spoke with an Elmer hat. I know we kind of not asked to do that in an organization, but we, you know, there comes a time when you have to do that. At the last council meeting of Elmer, indeed, I did press for a general look at optional sites for the library. And a resolution to that effect was sent to the county, and we're kind of, you know, receiving and filing it here. But I think that is something that needs to be done. After all, it is the Elmer Library, and it is something that the Council of Elmer and the people of Elmer should support. And I can understand the frustration, as I said at the beginning, that it may seem useless to try again for something that was turned down again and again and again downtown, but try we must. There are many valid reasons to have an enlarged library downtown. You know, as I said at one of the Elmer Council meetings, we come with, especially me, comes with old baggage, but it's time to throw the old baggage out and start again and have another look. I really appreciate the fact that the county is taking another look at this, but I think we must go beyond what we have come to so far. And as I say, the Elmer Council has said, let's look at something else. So I'm advocating that right now. Let us debate and discuss the merits and the demerits of the complex site, but let us also not stop there. Let's discuss the merits and the demerits of a downtown location. And I was hoping that this process would allow for that. Let's have a similar public consultations concerning a downtown site for the library. I know that part of this resolution says that, part of the report says that we can bring other options, but really it should have its own separate discussion in terms of a downtown. We owe that to the people of Elmer. So I do have an amendment to this resolution. I don't know that I can bring the amendment forth because there's no resolution on the floor right now. Once the resolution is voted on the floor, I would like to bring forward an amendment at that point. So anyway, this is part of, I think, the process that you've begun is an important process for the town of Elmer and the township of Malahide and the county of Elgin. And I think that despite the fact that we kind of rushed into approving the complex in principle, we really, really need to take a look at how we can manage one downtown. So let's make that part of the discussion. Thank you.
Okay, so I guess I'm going to wade in on this. So ultimately, it will be council of the town of Elmer that will make the final decision, and that comes with the monetary and everything. So I do realize that the county's only helping the process at this point. I guess I don't want to see county staff wasting a lot of time. That's something that's not going to be received well at the end. So that's my concern is we're trying to help this process along, but not impede the town of Elmer's decision. So I guess I'm looking for some feedback from Blaine or Brian at this point. If your opinion of moving forward, if what we're attempting to do may not even succeed in the end.
Sure. Mr. Warden, to initially respond, I mean, we are responding to council's direction on this matter, and so that direction was to pursue the complex in principle, and so our process is geared towards that. I did indicate in the report that, you know, certainly all options could be received. But as far as our focus and our process, and I think the one thing, and I know, I mean, I appreciate that Councillor Cook had mentioned the journey we've taken on this is, I think one of the things that we're trying to stress is that the status quo is not the option. And the next steps in this process have to be actionable and feasible. And so that's the kind of where we're trying to move this process. And we do hear about alternate locations. We need to see whether or not they're actionable and feasible, and is there commitment to doing it? Because going back to, through council, our perspective on this is that the status quo is not the option. We do not want to be 5 years from now operating in 3,000 square feet. So I will just put that out there, that we are looking for actionable progress on this matter.
Go ahead, Councilor Cook.
Yes, thank you for those comments, Brian. I think that, you're quite right. I'm looking for actionable projects on this as well. So that's why I'm going to suggest in the amendment that we look at two items. One is the complex and the other one is downtown. And I think that the process as I see happening is after you have two of those kind of public consultations that would come to Elmer Council, and there will be, through this process, I believe, I can't speak for council right now, but I think there will be a resolution that, for one or the other, at Elmer Council. I don't have a crystal ball, but this has gone on long enough. And I do believe that now that it's come up again, and I appreciate the council or kind of the county being part of this, now that it's come up again, there has to be a resolution for one or the other this time.
Okay. I guess I was here when this went down the toilet the last time. I was covering for Mayor McIntyre at the time, but yeah, I do feel your pain. It's you're wearing about 3 or 4 hats right now, and it's can see the challenges. So, Councilor Gier, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. So just a few points. So first, I want to caution my colleagues to not switch hats at this table. It's just not appropriate nor allowed. So we only wear one hat in this particular room. So the discussion has to be focused on our duties and responsibilities for the corporation of the County of Elgin. Other discussions have to take place in other chambers, and other points of view need to be expressed in other chambers. Other points is, like, I know there's a lot of reminiscing of the past, and I also think that I caution anyone to bring back arguments or any aspect of the past, because I think the decision we're looking at is for our communities of the future. So in a moment, we're going to receive a report from Hampson that talks about the growth and the community and the influx of residents that and businesses that will come to the county. And I think as far in the area of Elmer, I think we can anticipate, and that's why we need to envision things in the future where the growth is going to be and where the center of gravity of what we call downtown now and the support of businesses might actually shift. So again, we need to zoom out and look at the big picture and take the next report that we will receive in terms of growth and projected activity. And I also want to support the fact that libraries are so much about community services. So the access and the envisioning of who will be accessing this this facility needs to be kept in mind. And I was struck by even like the different annual reports that we get, and for each library, and the amount of programming that takes place is astonishing, and it's great news, and it's very much about it's active. From children to seniors. So we need to keep that in mind. So the purpose of a library has changed too, and is continuing to change. And finally, I want to say that on the consultation piece, it's really, really important that we provide information upfront. If we are doing a consultation, that means we're asking people to express an opinion. In order to express an opinion, you have to form an opinion. And in order to form an opinion, you have to be informed. So it's going to be really important that before going out, we provide, and if that includes providing additional pros and cons and like the visioning of the future of different options, different possibilities, and I agree, it will require a bit of investment of resources on staff, but I personally think that's the only valuable way of doing public consultation, is based on facts and based on concrete options and possibilities. Thank you.
Councilor Cookett, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Ryan. Just a brief comment. I generally agree with Councillor Giger in terms of we need to forget the past and look at the future. And certainly I think that by looking at the But the pros and cons of both options that I've mentioned is the way to look at the future. And certainly when we do this, there will be lots of lots of information for the public. So I don't want to discuss the merits and demerit right here, I think.
Okay. I can ask for the resolution and then the amendment, but, or we can discuss it further right now, but looking for direction from you, Blaine.
Thank you, Warden. A couple of thoughts that I'd recommend to council to consider, and they've been touched upon. I think Brian touched upon the importance of service. And that's really what this facility and quite frankly, what the county is here to provide. So, the libraries provide such a broader service today than what they used to. Some people might say that, there's no role for a public library in today's communities. I strongly disagree, because I think the service that they've provided has expanded so much than what they were when some of us used to hold mom's hand and go to the public library. There's such a broader provider of different services through our community, and I don't think that can be, understated. So I'd like to always have our focus on what type of services that we want to provide to our community. The where it is really should be driven by what it can do and how it can do that best. There are a couple of sort of auxiliary things that I think can come into that discussion and perhaps cloud it a little, but it really should be service focused. I think Councillor Giguère, you touched on something that you will always hear me stress is the vision of what kind of community you want. What kind of community you want in the future. So I think, Councillor Cookett, you're absolutely right that hanging on to things from the past, I think would be a detriment to where we're headed. The county has a lot going on right now that can provide such an exciting view of what the county can be in a number of years. So I think the vision that needs to be developed to help drive, what types of services and the where comes after all of that is to, where best can those services be provided and be accessed by our community. I think those are my preliminary thoughts, Warden, but I'll leave it to council to continue the discussion, and certainly Brian and his staff and myself are here to provide any guidance we can.
Okay, any further comments around the table? Go ahead, Deputy Warden.
Well, thank you, Mr. Warden. The council of this corporation has been given one alternative to explore. And it seems to me that's what the focus of the consultation is to be. It may prove at the end of the day that it's not acceptable, but how do you know that until you go out and actually do this? So that's fine. Going to borrow your comments. We have to stay in our lanes, and we're the provider of the service. It's the town of Elmer that has to provide the location or identify it. One's been identified, and that's the one I think that should be explored at this point. There may be an alternative that comes up, and it comes from the town of Elmer, and that'd be fine. Can explore that one too. But I agree with what staff are saying. Envision what the ultimate service is going to be, and then hopefully you can find a venue from which to deliver that service from. So a report's been put before us, certain recommendations to move forward with that public consultation. The logical step. Let's move forward.
I guess, Brian, a question for you. So the timeline for what would be a new library, is it a 50-year investment? Is it more than that? What's the time horizon for what you would envision in a new library?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Warden, for that question. I think it depends on the scale of the investment that's going to be made into the location. And one of the things that I know in our previous analysis of the complex space is that there was some preliminary design work that was done, and how a layout can work. And at that time, some ballpark costing that I think in the whole scheme of things was not going to be overly prohibitive to proceed. And so the level of investment would certainly be less than a new build where you would expect to have decades in that building. So I mean, that is certainly part of this discussion as well, and that is, is the dream by moving to the complex, would the dream of a downtown location be gone? Absolutely not. But what we're saying and what we've tried to stress to council is that, and I have to commend Deline. I mean, a lot of times you heard in our presentations, we have a show and tell. And we go and we tell you about all the great things we're doing, but we don't actually tell you too much about the challenges we're experiencing or some of the shortcomings of our service. In the case of this delegation, we did have to go to Elmer and indicate what a serious challenge it is for us to operate in the current space. I mean, we have a workroom with 7 people sharing it. It's also a lunchroom where we where we sort our materials, have a lunchroom. And we've reached the point where it's very difficult to provide a high level of service from the space we're in. So she went to the Elmer Town Council and, after switching to the good portion, reminded council of the challenges that we're having in the current space. And this comes to the point about the status quo not being the option. We have put up and we'll say the Elmer Libraries is a success story because it continues to be well used, and that's a credit to the supporters that are here and so on. Our circulation rates are high. We look forward to what we can actually do when we actually have appropriate space. That's kind of the background in this. The other thing that we did make clear in the first report is that there is a difference here between your role as you were reminded as a library board and your role of the town of Elmer as owner of a building. And in the current ownership situation, the town of Elmer would have to be the driver on an expansion to the old town hall. I mean, it's not our property. It's not, and they're the current owner of it, and that's also specified through the Public Libraries Act. Whereas other leasing options this council could consider, but certainly no one wants to go ahead with something that the residents of the town of Elmer are not going to support. So, I mean, there are all those arguments, but we really are landing at a point here where, and to go back to Deline's presentation, to say like, we just really do not want to be tolerating the status quo much longer, and we need an actionable plan. And, I know we're not talking about the past, but I mean, we've heard, some of the things that are coming up, I mean, they do require a firm commitment, not just a kind of further consultation, study and a committee and so on. We need to know, like, where's this going? And I got to think that in the last, several years, even post-COVID, there has been an opportunity, but we've also heard with challenges in the old town hall building regarding its very maintenance and so on. So like, where is this going? Because as an administrator, we have to be responsible planning for the future of our service, to have a stable roof over our heads for the foreseeable future. And so in consultation with council and in that report, you've given us direction right now to pursue the complex as that solution. Is it a 20-year solution? We'll see what the town of Elmer wants to do next regarding that. But is it one to stabilize our operations, get us the space that's needed? Yes. And is it actionable, and could it be fiscally achieved without impact to the community or much impact to the community? Yes. So, we're looking for direction. We thought we have that direction to pursue this option. Again, maybe a new strategy's developed for the next phase of this discussion.
Thank you. Councillor Cook, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. Just another comment. I said I didn't want to debate the merits of other options, but I just wanted to point out, we talk about staying in the lane, and I can appreciate those comments. Let's remember that the initial resolution came from the complex and not from the town of Elmer. When the resolution from county was sent to the town of Elmer, the town responded by saying, let's look at some other options as well. And so I guess I'm looking at that particular response, from the town saying, this is part of what we expected to happen in this process is that you've asked us what we want, and what we want is to look at more than the complex at this point. And I think that if we look at, as Brian says, we look at, in other locations while we're dealing with the complex, I don't think that's going to be sufficient to bring out all of the argument, to bring out all of the discussion. We just need a separate discussion. So all my amendment is asking for is let's have 2 of the public consultations, one for complex and one for downtown. And I think that that's going to be important for the people of Elmer. It's going to be important to see that the county of Elgin is part of both of those discussions and not just honing in on one. But the amendment just asked for another consultation dealing with downtown. Thank you.
So I get, Brian, I'm gonna put you on the hot spot. So, so are you comfortable going forward with an amended motion?
Mr. Warden, through to Councillor Cookett, in the one instance with the complex, it is kind of it's a firm proposal, even though we're still waiting for some details regarding square footage. We know the location. I'm not sure what the firm proposal is regarding expansion of the old town hall and what the commitment to that is. But certainly, I've heard some of the ideas and they could be explored and studied as part of this. I mean, I think we can take all ideas. I'm having a hard time envisioning 2 consultation processes kind of, running at the same time. There is certainly flexibility that could go into this particular process to consider an alternate proposal, but it has to be firm. It can't be just an open-ended, oh, maybe, we could go here, we could go there. Like, we have been through this discussion so many times that it almost needs to be an either or. And I'm not yet aware that the town is advancing the either or the or. Right? So that's really, if that discussion is going to happen, we need a commitment from the town to say, here's what we're committed to doing. And here's the square footage involved and how it's, going to work from a development point of view and a timeline.
So I guess I'm going to go back to Blaine. So are we premature in setting this resolution forward? Should we have more firm commitment from the town of Elmer before we proceed?
Warden, through you to members of council, I don't believe council's being premature. The previous direction was for us to continue down the path that Brian has outlined in this report with respect to what could be accomplished at the complex and seeking public input on the services that could be expanded within that facility. So I don't believe council is being premature. That was the direction that was previously provided. And that's what, Brian and his staff are continuing to work on. Should council wish to have a clear commitment from the town of Elmer, I certainly don't think that would be, that would hurt anything. I think given the current arrangement where the town provides the facility and the county provides the service, certainly we'd be looking for as clear a direction as we can from the town so that we could be collaborative in working towards, achieving a final solution, as Brian outlined, staying where things are and continuing to, try to provide, the best service we can in that location isn't, and my recommendation to council should not be an option. So I think it lies in county council's hands as to how you'd like to proceed, but I certainly don't think that council's been premature in their direction to staff. I think we can continue along this path. Certainly with respect to any public consultation around services, location will come up. But as I previously said, I think service and the vision for the facility and the vision for the services that we'd like to provide to the community should drive any other discussion on location. Another comment, if I was recommending to council to build a new library or to build a new recreation facility, I would recommend to build them together. That would be my thoughts. I've analyzed enough recreation facilities in my lifetime. I don't need to analyze any more. I can tell you that the more services that you can combine under one roof, the better it is. The better it is for the provider of the service, the better it is for the community receiving the service. But, you know, if you were breaking ground on any type of new facility, that would be my recommendation.
Go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, Mr. Warden, this might as well help to inform council as we go forward here too, is that we're going to be bringing forward a report just to tighten up what is now our branch construction policy. And maybe to amend it to being a lease and construction policy to really stress the public ownership side of this, a public library being in a public building. It's a bit of a gray area right now to assist, because one of the things that we do know is that there could be all kinds of proposals for spaces that are privately owned, and you know, seeking council's commitment that we want this into a space that is publicly owned, that it provides us with that stability, and whether it be the 5, 10, 20-year window, but the investments that we're going to make them to ensure that we are actually dealing with a municipal partner or as at least some form of a public entity to provide stability to our service. So that will be coming as well, and council will have an opportunity to deliberate on that as well, and maybe provide some clarity then in terms of what are the options. Are they all the options of all the vacant buildings, or are they strictly limited to those that are within the public domain?
Any further questions or comments before we, Councillor Cook, go ahead.
If I may, one more, we seem to be discussing the merits and demerits of location rather than the process here. So I'd like to move forward with the motion and with my amendment, just so we have it on record.
Anything further? Catherine? Oh, Councillor Whitner, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Warden. Thanks, Brian, for your report. I mean, it's a tough job. We were put here, though, to make decisions, and it's about time we've made decisions. Deputy Warden Ketchbaugh, you're absolutely right. We're going to be looking at the pros and cons of putting it there, if it fails or whatever, but that's a good idea. It's a good start. It's what we have to do. But the expiry date for this decision is well past due. I've been on a long time, and it's always been there. So a decision has to be made. So thank you.
So we have a amendment to the original resolution that's before you. So we'll have to deal with that first. So we'll have a mover and a seconder for the amended motion. No, for the original motion. Original motion first. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. First, we'll vote as to whether we will accept an amendment. And if that passes, then we will vote on the amendment. And if that is defeated, then we'll vote on the original.
Go ahead.
Amendment to what?
That's true. We need to have a mover and thank you, sorry, Mr. Warden, through you to Deputy Warden. We should have a mover and a seconder for the original motion first.
Okay.
You need to read it.
Go ahead. So we'll read the resolution.
Resolved that Elgin County Library staff be authorized to lead a community consultation process regarding future accommodation of the Elmer branch of the Elgin County Library at the East Elgin Community Complex before the end of May 2025, as outlined in the March 11th, 2025 report titled Community Consultation Process for Relocation of Elmer Library Branch, from the Director of Community and Cultural Services, and in response to the resolution on this matter approved by Township of Malahide Council, and that a summary of the outcome of this consultation process be provided to County Council and councils of the Township of Malahide and Town of Elmer as soon as feasible, and that recommendations received from Elmer Town Council as contained in Town of Elmer CAO Report 925 as attached be received and filed, and that copies of this report be circulated to the councils of the Town of Elmer and the Township of Malahide.
Thank you, Catherine. Mover and seconder, please. A recorded vote? Yes?
Well.
Okay, mover and seconder, we have Ketchabah and Hens. Any further discussion? Go ahead, Councillor Cook.
I would like to move an amendment to the motion. The amendment would read that the community consultation process include an additional public consultation at a different time than the complex consultation with regard to the future accommodation of the Elmer Library branch in a downtown location. Again,
Councillor or Deputy Warden.
Wait until after. Excuse me, I should wait until after it's seconded, but I have a question.
Okay, so we have Councillor Cook that has moved the amendment. We have a seconder, Councillor Noble.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. The question is, does the amendment require the identification of an alternative location before the consultation? Because what are you going to consult on?
the location would be next to, it's a downtown location, so it would be next to the existing library. An expansion of that library or a new building. One of the two. You want to, when I say downtown location, if you would like it specified more specifically, say a downtown location adjacent to the current library.
Mr. Warden, well, thank you, Councillor Cook. All I'm trying to say, how do we have a public consultation unless we understand what the alternative is? And that's all I was asking for. To have a public consultation on a hypothetical is kind of hard to do. Just my opinion.
Councillor Jagger, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. So I'm seeking a similar clarification in terms of the timing. Did it say separate or after? Because I think, to be fair to the public, I think they would have to be concurrent. So I would like to know how long it would take, assuming the work, the research, the creating the information that is needed to form an opinion would be developed by the town of Elmer. Then it would be a concurrent consultation process to compare options. And I believe the motion, the amendment is simply says at a later time, at a different time.
At a different time, I can't, if I may, Ms. Warden, I can't see concurrent consultations because I think they would take several hours and people would be beaten to death to have it at the same day, but certainly within the same week, or, you know, I'll leave that up to county if the county's the one that's beheading this consultation as to the timing.
Go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Warden. I just as staff, I mean, we do go back to the direction the county council's provided us on this matter, and that is to proceed in principle with relocation to the complex. That is the direction that we've been given, And that is the direction we're looking to implement with this consultation process. If that consultation process turns out that maybe this isn't feasible or new information comes to light, but in terms of how we've been approaching this, we haven't been approaching this from all options that are on the table right now. Our direction was from you back in January was to proceed with relocation in principle to the complex.
I guess from my own perspective, I see where two consultations is going to be a little confusing and a little onerous for staff, but it just seems that whatever comes out of the initial proposal, then maybe at that point you do a change in direction. But
Thank you, Mr. Warden, just to put it out there that even if council elects to proceed with this public consultation on the community center, it does not preclude alternatives.
any further questions or comments? And we'll be voting on the amendment. Catherine?
Thank you, Mr. Warden. First, we need a vote around the table to accept the amendment, then we'll vote on the amendment.
So let's be a vote to accept. So if there's no further questions or comments, I'll call the vote. All in favor? Oh, Hoover and seconder first. Yeah, yeah. Yeah. Okay, all in favor again. Two in favor, opposed? Opposed, so the amendment is defeated. So go back to the original resolution, which has been read. Yep, reread it. Yeah, go ahead.
Resolved that Elgin County Library staff be authorized to lead a community consultation process regarding future accommodation of the Elmer branch of the Elgin County Library at the East Elgin Community Complex before the end of May 2025, as outlined in the March 11th, 2025 report titled Community Consultation Process for Relocation of Elmer Library Branch from the Director of Community and Cultural Services, and in response to the resolution on this matter approved by the Township of Malahide Council, and that a summary of the outcome of this consultation process be provided to County Council and councils of the Township of Malahide and Town of Elmer as soon as feasible, and that recommendations received from Elmer Town Council as contained in Town of Elmer CAO Report 925 as attached be received and filed, and that copies of this report be circulated to the councils of the Town of Elmer and Township of Malahide.
Councillor Cook, a comment?
Yeah, can I make a final comment? I just want to thank everyone for the discussion. I think it was important to have this, and certainly important for the town of Elmer and the people of Elmer to hear. So thank you very much. And I hold no grudges. So don't have any hitmen, but thank you for the discussion.
Thank you, Councillor Cook. So I'll call the vote. All in favor? Opposed? One opposed. Motion is carried. Thank you all. We'll take a 5-minute break. It's been a little over an hour. We'll come back to order with item 6.4, the report from the Growth Planning Steering Committee. And I'll start it and I'll quickly turn it over to Matt. So the last meeting of the Growth Planning Steering Committee, we received a report from Henson on the updated growth projections for the Elgin County, and it needs to be put into the official plan. And that's just here for council's approval and to receive. So Matt, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you very much. Through the warden to county council, exactly as the warden mentioned, as part of sort of finalizing, wrapping up our official plan process, we have an opportunity to update it with some new population and employment projections, as well as updated land needs analysis. We have got Hempson to do an update to our previous study. Some of the changes that are notable in the update are that Central Elgin went from having a surplus of residential lands to a deficit, and the deficit in Elmer grew. Those are the two big changes. Some of the requirements or the driving forces for the update are a combination. They're Ministry of Finance projections. They extended out a little further than what our previous study had. The property across the road has the potential to add quite a bit of population and maybe some employment to the county as well. There's been some changes in our immigration rates nationally, which may have some influence, and then just the overall distribution of where population and employment goes throughout the province. Those are the big driving forces. We have an updated study. I have heard from several of our LMPs, including BAM, Malahide, and Central, just about the studies, how the methodology was done. There were some concerns, and Southwold as well. There was some concerns in that the projections don't factor in things like servicing or things like official plan designation. And that was addressed at the Growth Planning Steering Committee by Hemson. The methodology is a little different in that it looks more at trends. It looks at historical trends, it looks at census data, and then it uses sort of what has happened in the past to project what will happen in the future. So I understand some of the concerns. What this study does not do is it does not take away any lands that are designated for growth in the future. So any of those areas that are designated for growth, they will remain designated for growth. If there are wants or needs at the LMP level to look at expanding some of those areas in the future, we will look at them on a case-by-case basis. And I'll also note these population projections, employment projections, and land needs analysis. This is something that's looked at, often. As we gear up for official plan updates, it's something that we'll look at and redo in the future. Hemson mentioned in their presentation earlier that it's not something that you would want to do on a yearly basis. It's something you'll want to do on about a 5-year basis because the trends tend to fluctuate a lot. So you don't want to do it too frequently because your projections will fluctuate too much. They try to curb it so that there's more of a sort of steady trend. In summary, I'm looking for some direction from council to update our adopted official plan. This can either be done through a future report with official plan readoption, or we can simply request the Municipal Affairs and Housing to incorporate the changes as part of the official plan approval process. Our official plan is currently with MMAH for review, and I've let them know this is something we're considering. They said it's fine if we wanted to just send a letter outlining the points of the official plan that need updating. They'd be happy to review that as part of their approval process, which would probably be the most simple. If there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you, Matt. Any questions around the table? Seeing Councillor Gier, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. It sounds like the most efficient route would be to send a letter to the ministry for changes. And I would be interested in concretely, so basically seeing the draft letter, because there's the full report, and then it's hard to know exactly what we're asking, what we would be suggesting would be changed in the official plan. So if we could add just a bit of transparency on that, just by bringing that letter to council, if that doesn't delay too much, then I think it would be clear as to the scope or to what extent and what type of changes would be incorporated and suggested in our official plan.
Through the warden to Councillor Jagger, I'd be happy to do that.
Any other questions? Seeing none, we have a resolution, please.
Resolved that the report titled Updated Growth Forecasts and Land Needs Assessment for County of Elgin from the Chair of the Growth Planning Steering Committee and Director of Planning and Development dated March 11th, 2025 be received and filed, and that County Council direct planning staff to update the county's adopted official plan with the new population and employment projections by requesting that the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing incorporate the changes as part of their Elgin County official plan approval process, and that correspondence to the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing be brought before County Council for approval.
Mover and seconder, please. Jagger and Noble. Any further discussion? All in favor? Motion carries. Thank you, Matt. I guess you might be here for the next one too. Next, item 6.5, Director of Planning and Development, update on the county planning service. Go ahead, Matt.
All right, thanks very much. Through the Warden and County Council, just wanted to give you an update with how the process is going to establish our county level planning service. We have been in discussions with Southwold, with Dutton Dunwich, with West Elgin, and at this time, I'm happy to report that Dutton Dunwich this seems favorable. We've got a bylaw going to their council on Wednesday. My fingers are crossed that the bylaw gets signed and the county will be providing planning service in short order to Dutton Dunwich. And I'm also here just to request a slight change in how the payment would be transferred over to our LMPs. So in the past, we've discussed doing it through the county levy. We had a discussion about that and just talked about the fairness of that and how it might be a challenge to implement planning service fee through the county levy if all of the LMPs aren't involved. That brought us to the discussion around a flat fee. From there, I went away and looked at everybody's workload and did some calculations based on planning application type, the number of hours it would take, and came up with a flat fee for how that would be implemented sort of on an annual basis. We've had some discussions with our LMPs about that flat fee. It does come out a little higher, but it is an entire planning service that they get from administration, development planning service, policy planning service. So but in any case, the flat fee itself, when you look at it sort of as a one-time payment, it is a little high. We had some requests from our LMPs to look at the fee as an hourly basis. Now, fortunately, as part of my review and how I came to that flat fee, I did calculate all of the hourly rates and how that would work from each application type to who would be working on it. So senior planners would be working on more complicated files. Junior planners would be working on less complicated files. And then we have an hourly rate that's associated with each of our positions. So I'm happy to provide that service as an hourly rate. I don't think the overall number changes at the end of the year, but it's on a pay-by-use type of service. So if there isn't as much planning work that's going to be done this year, then the rate just, the fee just isn't as much. And then we wouldn't need to consolidate that in the future. It would just be an hourly rate moving forward. Now, it is a little more tricky for us to project how many staff we'll need internally to provide that service, especially as we get more LMPs on board. That's why we are hoping to still be able to use a planning consultant as a relief valve, not as a constant thing that we want to do, because we've got to keep in mind that private planning consultants, they cost a lot of money, and we're trying to keep our fees low. But if we need to use a private planner, we will in the interim and on very temporary measure until we can justify creating a permanent position on our team. We don't want to have to hire someone if there's not an absolute need to. We don't want to spend money without having to absolutely need to. So we have a consultant on retainer that we'll use on a temporary basis if needed. And then once we get to a point where okay, we've spent enough money, there's enough work to justify another position, I'll be coming back before council to ask for that position, as we talked about in the budget process. So with your direction, I'm hoping to approach our LMPs on a by the hour basis, and I'm looking for your direction there. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Questions for Matt? Go ahead, Deputy Warden.
Well, thank you, Mr. Warden. Matt, I guess you're going to have to explain to me a little more about why it would be more difficult to predict county resourcing on a flat fee, or excuse me, an hourly fee versus a flat fee. I don't quite understand what the difference or difficulty would be. If I was the LMP, and so I suspect that we will be down the road, something to legal services, if we use next department, we pay an hourly fee. And I expect that that's would be the most fairest approach for us. And as you say, it demonstrates the benefit principle. If you use it, you pay for it. So I just don't understand the difference in between predictability of resourcing. If we're going to contract with the county for planning services, you're going to get it, whether it's 50 applications a year or whether it's 120. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely, through the warden. Happy to explain my thought process there. Through the hourly rate, what we've done through our draft agreement is we've explained how the service would work sort of by position, what the rate is by position. One of those positions, for instance, would be a senior policy planner. And that senior policy planner would mostly work on policy-related work. If we were in a flat rate, the flat rate would include one or two policy projects. The way it would work through an hourly rate is I would hope that the LMP that would sign up for one or two policy projects would follow through with those one or two policy projects. But through this process, they might have the option to say, well, we've talked about one or two policy projects, but we're only going to move forward with one of them this year. And if we have enough LMPs that do that, suddenly it might decrease the amount of work so much that it might mess with the amount of work that's needed at the county level. So we're maybe rather than having two policy planners, eventually we only need one. So I just feel like the flat rate kind of guarantees we're going to do a certain amount of work, at least at the policy level, whereas the hourly rate, it's a by use service. There's no guarantee that the LMP will follow through with a certain policy project. We could build that into the agreement, but we're trying to find savings for each of the LMPs. And generally, when you're looking for those savings, unfortunately, the policy work goes first.
Arguably, Matt, that could happen under a flat fee service. We could decide at the local level that we're not going to proceed with the volume of work. So same difference. And one final question, if I may, Mr. Warden. I would assume that the hourly fee is going to be reflective upon each different position. So it's not just a flat service fee. For example, if we're contracting with a senior policy advisor or, excuse me, planner versus a junior planner, be a different fee structure.
Yep, that's correct.
Any other comments? Councillor Hens, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. This has been a challenge. My council had concerns, but I will say, like all good partnerships, there's been give and take, and Matt has responded to the concerns that Dutton Dunwich had, and I'm proud to announce that we are moving forward on this, and it's a work in progress. Make no mistake about it. And I think I've certainly seen that it's the right thing for my municipality. And I think in time, other LMPs will see that as well. And if we get to where I hope this heads, which is everyone involved, and we can get to the levy, I think we will all see the benefits of it. I'm convinced, well, I certainly have been from the start, that it's right for Dutton Dunwich, and I think in time, others will see the merits of it as well. So thank you, Mr. Warden.
Yeah, I can only echo Councillor Hens's comments. Southwold, we're in the same boat. Some hesitancy to go the full yard right now, but I think we'll be signing on the dotted line here shortly as well with the changes. I think it gives my council a little more comfort level to start, and maybe like Councillor Hens said, in the future, we could go to the full, once, 1 year deal. That's the way I would see it coming from us as well. Any other questions or comments? Thank you for all the hard work, Matt, and go ahead, Councilor Whitner.
Thank you, Warden. Just for you to Matt. Matt, I appreciate the cost recovery part of this. That's a great way to go. You say there's a range of fees. Do you have any idea what they are, just offhand?
Off the top of my head, I want to say they range between something like $40 up to $80. Our top range is the bottom range of a planning consultant. Generally speaking, your planning consultants are going to charge you a flat fee by the hour. It'll be somewhere in the area of $170 to $200 an hour. And so we're not in the game to make money. We just need cost recovery, right? So our fees reflect that.
Thank you. That's good to hear.
Okay, anything further? If not, we have a resolution.
Resolved that the report titled Update on County Planning Service from the Director of Planning and Development dated March 11th, 2025 be received and filed, and that County Council direct planning staff to continue working with the county's local municipal partners through a by-the-hour fee structure to help implement the county's planning service.
Mover and seconder, please. Whitner and Hens. Any further discussion? All in favor? Motion carries. Thank you, Matt. Moving down to 6.6, Manager of Administrative Services, Deputy Clerk, Committee Bylaw Update. Go ahead, Catherine.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. Through you to County Council. This is a report detailing proposed updates to the council committee bylaw to make sure that it's consistent with the newly adopted procedural bylaw. So staff reviewed the committee bylaw, which was last updated in 2023. So it was more up to date than some of our other bylaws that we've gone through in the past year. But because of the procedural bylaw, there were some inconsistencies, so minor updates were required. Mainly, the format of the bylaw was changed to be consistent with formatting that we use for all Elgin County bylaws. It was a little bit different. We wanted to make sure it was consistent just from a formatting perspective. The bylaw also contained references to the previous procedural bylaw as well as the notice bylaw, things that have been updated since. So those outdated numbers were removed and accurate references were included. One of the things that council had asked for was to make it clear, now that we're changing and the procedural bylaw has changed us as of April 1st to a council and separate committee of the whole structure, just to make it clear that committees of council operate following the rules of committee of the whole as outlined in council's procedural bylaw. So as opposed to operating under council rules, they operate under committee of the whole rules. So that was detailed in section 4B. Section 6, suspension of the rules. We changed that as well because it currently was inconsistent with the procedural bylaw, which requires a 2/3 majority vote to suspend the rules. So we just changed that to make it consistent. And we decided that under Section 24D, we added a provision to indicate that should the warden be an appointed member of a committee, they will automatically serve as the chair, and the annual election of a chair will not be required. However, the annual election of a vice chair at that committee at the first meeting of the year will still be required. We also updated the delegations and pecuniary interest sections just to mirror the procedures that were in bylaw 2506. We changed in bylaw 2506, we had made some wording changes to the pecuniary interest section because at the time it was a little convoluted and difficult to understand. So we broke it apart into more paragraphs instead of having one big giant paragraph of information. So we just made sure that that was mirrored the same in our committee bylaw. And then additionally, the delegations section references the new procedural bylaw. So that the rules contained in the new procedural bylaw are the ones to be followed for delegations, both at council and if a delegation were to come to a committee. You'll notice that the bylaw that was attached to this didn't include any of the terms of reference. Those are not changing except for, at this point, we're changing the template None of the templates were the same, so we're working on making those accessible through AODA and making them look more consistent. But when the bylaw comes before council at the next meeting for adoption, those will be attached again as the appendices. The only difference will be how it looks. And then there's 3 changes that I didn't include in the report, but one council approved last year, a change to the Joint Accessibility Advisory Committee terms of reference, taking us from a mandatory 4 meetings a year to 2, which has already been approved by council, but that will be, those terms of reference will be the updated ones replaced. The ones that council just approved for the Terrace Lodge Fundraising Committee will be in there. And then also the Museum Advisory Committee terms of reference will be removed because council disbanded that committee at the end of 2024. Additionally, at some point in the future, legal services and admin services are contemplating proposed changes to the form and content of several of the terms of reference, but that's not something that council needs to contemplate today or when the bylaw is considered at the next meeting. That will be something that staff will bring forward a separate report at a different time. So the changes to those will be mostly just in the 3 that I mentioned, and then they'll look a bit different. The newly updated county logo that was approved at the end of 2023 to be more accessible with the different colors is added at the top. And instead of having a bunch of different headings that don't match on every one, they will all be consistent. So those are the changes. They're fairly minor, but staff wanted to make sure that before the procedural bylaw that council approved recently comes into effect on April 1st, that the committee bylaw was consistent with that bylaw as well. So I'd be happy to answer any questions that council might have. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. Any questions? Deputy Warden, go ahead.
Thank you, Catherine. Can you expand on the thinking behind section 24D?
I think it was just that often it's been our practice, our unofficial practice, that the warden has acted as chair for committees. We haven't been following the practice to elect a chair and a vice chair at every meeting. We tried this year to actually do that at the meetings that are the committees that have met so far. So that was just, it was just a staff recommendation because that has been the practice that we have been following. However, staff are open to making a change and to keeping that process of electing a chair and a vice chair for all the committees going forward. If that's what council wishes, and we could include that in the bylaw that comes before council.
Any concerns with that one? Per se, I really don't care myself. But
Mr. Warden, no, the argument was put to me a couple of years ago was, well, it's more convenient for staff, just do this. Well, okay, fine, but I was just curious why this was put in there. I mean,
go ahead, Catherine.
Really, it was just that it was unclear to us as staff, and we don't like things that are unclear. So we wanted to include it to be clear. So because that had been the practice we'd been following, the unofficial practice. But if it is the will of council, we can just take that out and make sure that we're electing a chair and a vice chair for all the committees at their first meeting of the year, or we can make it the warden. It's completely at the discretion of council. We just want it to be clear.
Councillor Jiguer, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Warden. I appreciate the intent of clarity. I agree. Clarity is key. I appreciate the Deputy Warden's comment, though I'm not keen on a default position. I think each committee should make an intentional decision based on the purpose of the committee and based on the members of the committee. It could be that the warden is for whatever reason, does not want to, or is not the best candidate for the chair. So I think I would just remove D and make sure it's intentional decision.
Everybody okay with that? You know, I'm fine with that too. It's, you chair enough meetings, at some point, you really don't care anymore if you chair or not. Sometimes it's better not to chair. Anyway, if everybody's okay with that, we'll make that change. Any other questions or concerns? Okay, seeing no further, that resolution.
Resolved that the report titled Committee Bylaw Update from the Manager of Administrative Services / Deputy Clerk dated March 11th, 2025 be received and filed, and that County Council approve the proposed updates to the committee bylaw as amended and direct staff to prepare the bylaw for consideration at the March 25th, 2025 meeting.
Mover seconder, Deputy Warden Ketchba, second, Counselor Jiguer. Any further discussion? All in favor? Motion carries. Moving down to correspondence, yeah, actually, 7.1, letter from Green Lane Landfill, Public Liaison Committee requesting a county council appointment of Jack Vanderkoy to the committee for the county representative. And this is something that Elsie Hutchins held in the past. Elsie passed away a few years ago, and we neglected to reappoint somebody. So I know Blaine and Peter do follow along the committee, their minutes. Any comments from your side, Blaine?
Nothing really to add, Mr. Warden. As you pointed out, Mr. Duchek and I, we keep on top of things from a county perspective, reviewing the material that's circulated, and should there be anything from a technical perspective, he or I will attend the meetings. But as you and I discussed recently, I believe the next meeting is coming up next week, and I will attend that meeting.
Good. Right. Any other questions? If not, I have resolution.
Resolved that Elgin County Council appoint Jack Vanderkoy to the Green Lane Landfill Public Liaison Committee as the county representative.
Mover and seconder, please. Hence and Latham. All in favor? Motion carries. And moving down the consent agenda. Anything anybody wants to pull out and talk about? Counselor Widner, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Warden. The City of Woodstock put the letter through. And I would agree with that. The driving out there is getting worse. I know in Malahide, we've had some turning lane issues, but Mr. Duchek's been happy enough to help us out. I did notice in Elmer yesterday, they have a turning lane by the West End Tim Hortons, and there was a transport truck just parked there going in to get a coffee. Like, really? So anything we could do to get some help from the government, it would certainly help us, because I don't know what the answer is, but we can't keep spending money and not getting anywhere. Thank you.
Okay, so motion for support. Seconder. Jagger. All in favor? Motion carries. Anything else they'd like to highlight? Not seeing any. So we have resolution. Go ahead, Catherine.
Resolved that correspondence items 7.2.1 and 7.2.3 to 7.2.5 be received and filed.
Mover and seconder, please. Hence and Whitner. All in favor? Motion carries. Moving down to other business, statements or inquiries by members. Notice of motion. Matters of urgency, and I know we do have a matter of urgency. Catherine, or Wayne, you going to speak to it, or?
Yes, it's an item for closed discussion.
We need a motion to accept that for discussion in closed session. Whitner and Jagger, all in favor? Motion carries. Go ahead, Catherine.
Resolved that we do now proceed into closed meeting session in accordance with the Municipal Act to discuss the following matters under Municipal Act Section 239-2. Closed meeting item number 1, construction contract. Under Sections F, advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose, and K, a position, plan, procedure, criteria, or instruction to be applied to any negotiations carried on or to be carried on by or on behalf of the municipality or local board.
Mover and seconder, please. Hens and Latham. All in favor? Motion carries.
Resolved that we do now rise and report.
Mover and seconder, please. Hens and Whitner. All in favor? Motion carries. Next, consideration of bylaws.
Oh, no. Closed
Yeah,
meeting.
yeah, go ahead.
Closed meeting item number 1, construction contract. Resolved that the King Bridge project must commence imminently in order for the project to be completed in 2025 as intended by council. And that council declares the contract awarded to Gary D. Robinson Contracting Limited for RFT number 2024-T29 in breach if the outstanding conditions of the contract are not met by a deadline set by the Director of Engineering, and that council directs the Director of Engineering, in the event of such breach, to negotiate directly with other compliant respondents to RFT 2024-T29, beginning with the respondent that submitted the next to lowest bid on the terms and conditions directed by council, and that the Director of Engineering, notwithstanding anything to the contrary in bylaw number 2007, be authorized to award the King Bridge project and execute an agreement with the respondent if negotiations between the Director of Engineering and a respondent to RFT number 2024-T29 are successfully concluded, and that staff are directed to retender the project for 2026 if negotiations are unsuccessful.
Mover and seconder, please. Latham and Ketchabah. All in favor? Motion carries. Now consideration of bylaws.
Committee of the whole.
Pardon?
Resolved that we do now adopt recommendations of the Committee of the Whole.
Mover and seconder, please. Hens and Jagger. All in favor? Motion carries. Now we can do.
Bylaw number 2510, Budget Bylaw. Being a bylaw to provide for the adoption of the 2025 budget of the Corporation of the County of Elgin and to establish the 2025 tax ratios and tax rates for said corporation of the County of Elgin and its constituent lower tier municipalities. Resolved that bylaw number 2510 be now read a first, second, and third time and finally passed.
Mover and seconder, please. Ketchabah, seconder Latham. Further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
Bylaw number 2511, non-union employee remuneration rates. Being a bylaw to establish remuneration rates for employees covered by the job evaluation scale. Resolved that bylaw number 2511 be now read a first, second, and third time and finally passed.
Mover and seconder, please. Hens and Jagger. All in favor? Motion carries. And
Bylaw number 2512, confirmation. Being a bylaw to confirm proceedings of the Municipal Council of the Corporation of the County of Elgin at the March 11th, 2025 meeting. Resolved that bylaw number 2512 be now read a first, second, and third time and finally passed.
mover and seconder, please. Latham and Ketchabah. All in favor? Motion carries. And adjournment.
Resolved that we do now adjourn at 11:26 a.m. to meet again on March 25th, 2025 at 9 o'clock a.m.
Mover and seconder Whitner and Hence. All in favor? Motion carries. Thank you all.